Caught my husband making out with my grieving sister on our couch. Now he's leaving me for her while saying he loves us both. 2 years ago, my sister Lisa lost her husband, Jimmy, in a motorcycle accident. Losing him broke her, and she withdrew from the world entirely. For a long time, she vanished from my life, but about a year ago, she reached out to me, admitting she was struggling badly and needed help. I sprang into action, determined to help her heal. I found her an excellent therapist, pushing her to attend, and over time, she began reclaiming her life. My husband, Rick, saw how broken Lisa was and took her under his wing too. He felt truly bad for her and started spending a surprising amount of time with her. At first, I welcomed this. Lisa was slowly turning back into the sister I remembered. She laughed again, smiled, even joked around. I was genuinely happy, and Rick seemed happy for her, too. But their closeness kept deepening. The two of them started wanting to spend time alone, without me, but at first I didn't think much of it. It was a slow bleed. Little by little, they carved out these pockets where I wasn't included. Eventually, I couldn't ignore this anxious, jealous feeling inside me. I spoke up, told Rick that I missed being with him, that I felt neglected. He nodded, promised things would change, but nothing did. Then today, Lisa showed up at my front door in tears, clutching herself and sobbing about a dream she'd had about Jimmy. Rick and I tried to comfort her, but as soon as she stepped inside, she flew straight into Rick's arms. I was immediately on edge, but went along with it, following them to the living room. I sat, trying not to lose it, when Rick gently asked Lisa what had happened in her dream. Instead of answering, she turned to me and asked if I could leave the room. She said she wasn't comfortable telling me, her own sister. The humiliation burned in my chest, but I got up and left, tears starting to well in my eyes. I sat in another room for at least 10 minutes, too upset to move. Suddenly, a loud sound came from the living room, snapping me out of my daze. I hurried back, and nothing could have prepared me for the sight that greeted me, my sister and my husband, making out. On my goddamn couch. In my own home, every fiber in my body shredded. Rage, heartbreak, disgust. I turned and ran, barely making it to my bedroom before I exploded into tears and nausea, locking myself away from them. Rick never even tried to come in and talk to me. I stayed there, sobbing, shaking, feeling my world unravel. What do I do when the two people I trusted most are the ones to utterly destroy me? My world has collapsed, and I don't know how to breathe. Some time later, I heard Rick come to the door. He walked in, wouldn't look at me, just muttered something and slumped onto the bed. I was so furious I almost stormed out right then. I pressed him, voice shaking, asking what was happening between him and Lisa. He just sat there, silent, while I broke down, sobbing. Eventually, pushed too far, I screamed, "Answer me," he whispered, "I love her." That admission broke me more than anything else. I started screaming, how could he do this to me? Did all these years mean nothing to him? Was our marriage just a lie? I fell to the ground, begging him to explain how he could betray me with my own sister, then actually say he loves her. He just sat there, waiting until I was done. Then, in a voice as dead as I'd ever heard, he said he regrets not being with other women before marrying, that he shouldn't have married the first girl he dated. I was numb. I asked if he ever loved me at all. He said yes, but that after spending so much time with Lisa, he now knows she's the one he wants. I had nothing left to say. All I could do was stare in horror as my life slid off a cliff I didn't even see coming. Then I told him I might be pregnant, and he said he'd support me, then immediately admitted he didn't know how. He said he was leaving to be with my sister, apologized, and told me I deserved better. He said if I agreed to divorce he would give me everything. He just wanted out. At that moment, hatred exploded in me. I screamed at him to get out, that he had ruined my life and I hoped he was happy. When he had the nerve to try to hug me, I shoved him away. Someone knocked at the door. Before he left, he said he still loved me, that we'd figure it out. Then he just walked away. Later, I called my parents, desperate for some solid ground. My mother dropped a bombshell. Lisa had already called her, confessed to being in love with my husband, and declared she wanted to be with him. My own mother knew before I did. I can't even describe the feeling of betrayal twisting in my gut, like the entire world had circled behind my back. I've been looking up lawyers in my area, unable to believe how fast my life has turned upside down. I'm terrified. Tomorrow I'm taking a pregnancy test. I am praying I am not pregnant. I don't want to bring a piece of Rick into this world after what he's done. I've hit a low I didn't know existed. I want to drink, but I can't, just in case. I hate my life. Sometimes, I wish I didn't have to live through this. When I woke up today, it felt like I hadn't slept at all. I dragged myself out of bed, forced myself to take the pregnancy test, hands shaking. Thank God, I am not pregnant. It stings a little. I never thought I'd feel relieved to see a negative, after months of trying. Now, bizarrely, part of me aches for it anyway, like it's another thing I've lost on top of everything else. Later, while getting groceries, I checked the mailbox. There was a letter from Lisa. When I got back inside, I read it, and just reading her words made me sick. I can't even bring myself to look at it again. In the letter, she apologized, tried to explain. She said she'd been vulnerable after Jimmy's death, and after all that time spent with Rick, she fell for him. She thought she could never love again, so when she realized she loved Rick, she couldn't let him go. No one else could fill Jimmy's space but him. Lisa swore they had never gone farther than that kiss I walked in on, then begged for my forgiveness. She said she needs me in her life. I can't go on. My hands are shaking too much to keep typing. Rick has called me, left voicemails and texts telling me he loves me and wants to work things out. How can he even say that, after what he's done? Now that I know I'm not pregnant, I almost want to be. I want my marriage back, even though I loathe him. My emotions are tangled, a storm raging inside of me, and any sense of direction is lost. I can't stop replaying what he's done to me over and over in my mind. And then, when my phone lights up and I see his message, I just freeze. Why would he text me that? Is he starting to regret everything? Is he actually changing his mind after all that's happened? The confusion just eats away at me. I keep wishing these past few days had never happened, that things could go back to the way they were, before the heartbreak, before the betrayal, when nothing was wrong and I still trusted him completely. I know deep down I shouldn't even consider forgiving him if he asks for another chance. I know I deserve better, but 10 years of marriage isn't something I can just erase. 10 years together. We were going to be parents. We already started dreaming about our family and our future. Now, I'm stuck here in this mess, so confused and hurt that I can hardly see straight, let alone think clearly. The pain is overwhelming. I can barely breathe. This is the worst I've ever felt, and I just wish I knew what to do next. Update 1. One of the most common questions I've been getting is about my mother. I spoke to her again, and she confessed that she's known about my sister having a thing for my husband for quite some time. She said she never wanted to tell me because she was trying to get my sister to let go of it. She didn't want me to be hurt. Apparently, a few months ago, she managed to get my sister to agree to let it go, and since she hadn't heard anything more about it, she assumed it was over. Then there's the letter I received in the mail. At first, I couldn't bear to write it all down, it was too painful. But with a few days' distance, I'm finally ready to share more details. Still, there are parts I'm simply not comfortable sharing, so please don't ask for more. Lisa started her letter with an apology for her behavior but immediately switched to blaming me. She claimed that I flaunted my happiness with my husband right in her face. She said it hurt her to see how genuinely loved I was, while she had no one. According to her, I should have reached out to her alone, and that I had no business involving my husband in something so serious. I honestly have no idea what she means. I mean, he's my husband. Am I not supposed to involve him when something this serious is going on? Then she said something that completely stunned me. She wrote that my husband supposedly told her he never really loved me, that she was the one he really wanted to be with, and that I shouldn't contact him at all anymore. She insisted instead that if I wanted to say anything to him, I should go through her. She also wrote she'd be bringing the divorce papers in a few weeks, with a few days to process. The entire thing just got more and more confusing in my head. And then, today, I found out something else. Lisa is pregnant. She actually told me, she's fucking pregnant. She says it's Rick's. Once my father informed me, Rick called almost immediately. I only picked up because I needed to hear him try to lie through his teeth about there being nothing between them before that stupid kiss. Rick sounded so apologetic, he said he was sorry, and he never meant for things to happen this way. That my father wasn't even supposed to tell me. I just started crying and asked him how he could get pregnant with Lisa when he knew damn well we were trying for a baby. What he said next absolutely blindsided me, and my head is still spinning from it. Rick told me he could still get me pregnant, if I wanted. What the actual fuck? I screamed at him. Why the fuck would I want to be pregnant with his child when he's shown himself to be such a piece of shit? That's when he told me he wanted to be with both me and my sister. That he thinks he's polyamorous. I was so shocked, I started laughing, like really laughing, the kind you do when you can't handle how ridiculous everything is. After I finally stopped, he started to say something else, but then I heard Lisa come into the room and ask who he was on the phone with. He immediately said nobody and hung up. Not long afterward, my sister texted me, letting me know she'd bring over the divorce papers next week, and that she'd expect me to sign them on the spot, since my husband is giving me everything. She also gave me a heads up that they're getting married next month, and that I'm welcome at the wedding, if I agree to pretend I never even had a romantic involvement with Rick. I am literally at a loss. Who is this man? Where did the person I married, someone I've shared the past 10 years with, even go? And why, after all of this, do I still ache for him, even knowing I can't have him? I just want the man I've loved and been with for a decade back. I hate Lisa. I don't even consider her my sister anymore, she's torn my entire life apart. But what do I do about Rick? He just texted me saying he still wants to be with me, still loves me, still wants a baby with me. Why is he doing this to me? Why is there even a part of me that wants to say yes? Fuck. Update 2. To be honest, the real reason I didn't give an update for so long is because I made some really poor decisions. Decisions I'm not proud of, and I couldn't bring myself to face the reality of what I'd done. I wish I could say I was strong enough to cut Rick and Lisa out for good, moved on, and that a year later I'm thriving without them. Sadly, that's not what happened. I really messed up. Someone once told me I have what's called a sad person brain. Back then, I brushed it off. But with time, I can see now they were absolutely right. I was desperate to do anything to make the pain stop, and I acted on that desperation. What's done is done, and now I need help. If you remember my last update, Rick and I were still trying to get pregnant when he left me for my sister. Even after he left, he floated the idea of us trying for a baby, claiming he might be polyamorous. I actually laughed at the sheer absurdity of it, but as days went by, that offer began haunting me. I couldn't stop thinking about what Lisa had done to me, how deeply angry I was, and I started fantasizing about exacting revenge, maybe by going along with Rick's suggestion. I imagined being able to throw it in her face that her new boyfriend didn't actually love her more than me. The more I thought about it, the more intoxicating that petty revenge became. Of course, I still wanted my husband and my old life back too. But the thought of shattering my sister's smug happiness gave me a satisfaction I never knew I could feel. Lisa worked overtime to limit any contact I had with Rick. I know she was scared he'd come back to me if given the chance. For a few months, she managed it. Rick still kept trying to get in touch, but it was always brief. I was angry and did my best to keep him at arm's length, but his persistence grew stronger. He said he loved me and missed me, and wanted me back more than anything. Sometimes, I blocked him on certain social media accounts, but he would just pop up somewhere else. I wish I could say I just cut him off completely, but I couldn't. The harder he tried, the more I found myself wavering. Eventually, all that persistence wore me down and we got back together. I told him I wouldn't stay with him unless he left Lisa. He swore up and down that losing me made him realize I was the one he truly loved and that Lisa meant nothing. And for a while, it felt like old times. When he was with me, my sister may as well have not existed. But every night, he'd go back to her. I was stupid enough to believe his endless excuses about needing the right time, about how guilty he felt for Lisa. I just didn't want to lose him again, so I let myself believe the lies. Then I found myself pregnant. I hadn't gone back on birth control from when we were originally trying for a baby, and, honestly, both of us were ecstatic at first. Suddenly, it seemed like I had everything back that I had lost: my husband, a family in the making, and the illusion that my shattered life was whole again. I let myself ignore every screaming red flag because I didn't want to see it. I just wanted the happiness back so badly. Of course, it couldn't last. Lisa found out, and my entire family turned their backs on me. My parents said it looked like I got pregnant just to hurt Lisa. As much as I wanted to deny it, I knew there was some truth to that. I was grasping at any way I could to get my old life back and couldn't let go of my anger. Lisa completely lost it. She threatened me, harassed me day and night with calls, emails, and texts that were pure venom. For months, I had to live in that hell, until I got a protective order against her. That only made things worse. My family hated me even more after that, and now none of them will speak to me. Rick was given an ultimatum: cut me off or lose the rest of the family. He hasn't outright decided, but it seems more and more likely he'll choose them. He's pulled away, speaking to me less and less. There's been mounting pressure from everyone for him to finalize our divorce, but for various reasons, it hasn't happened yet. The last time we spoke, he acted like I was to blame, as if I'd tempted him back and made his life harder by getting pregnant, even though he'd been the one who pursued me. He kept implying that I had trapped him, said things would be so much easier if I hadn't gotten pregnant. It breaks me to admit, I believed he was still the man I married. Now I see how hopelessly clouded my judgment has been, how desperate I was to feel happy again that I just wrecked my life even further. I'm 8 months pregnant now and terrified. I don't know how I can raise my baby alone. I don't want to give her up for adoption. The pain of losing my husband not once, but twice, is almost unbearable, even though it's all because of my own poor choices. Still, I can't let go. I can't believe everything he's done to me. Losing my entire family over this has been a sucker punch right when I was already at rock bottom. Now, most of our mutual friends want nothing to do with us. No one wants to take a side, but I can see how disgusted everyone is by how things turned out. I truly have no one left. Update 3. I wasn't going to post again. I was going to disappear into the quiet and pretend none of this ever happened. Try to be a normal person who goes to a normal job and shops for normal groceries and doesn't check the door twice before she goes to sleep. But the last 12 days swallowed me whole and spit me out as somebody else, and the only way I know to keep from screaming is to excavate it here. I went in for a routine OB appointment and left in a hospital gown with a band on my wrist. My blood pressure was high enough that my doctor didn't even finish her sentence. She just paged someone and suddenly I was on a rolling bed with the nurse telling me to breathe while strapping sensors to my belly. Words were thrown around: preeclampsia, induction, like tiny grenades landing in slow motion. I remember staring at the fluorescent light and the metal grid around it and thinking, of course my body would try to quit right at the end. I handed the nurse a folded copy of my protective order against Lisa and asked to be put under no information status. My hands were shaking so hard the paper made this ridiculous rattling sound. She squeezed my shoulder and said, "We'll keep you safe." I started crying so hard the monitor thought I was running a marathon. They dimmed the lights. I texted no one. Then I texted Rick. I don't even know why. Muscle memory, maybe. 10 years of J-shaped letters and be there soon and it's going to be okay. I just typed I'm being induced. Please don't tell Lisa. I don't want her here. I stared at the three dots for so long I felt sick. They vanished. He didn't answer. None of my family answered either. An hour later, the nurse came back and told me there was a man in the waiting room asking for me. My stomach dropped into the floor. He wasn't alone. I heard Lisa's voice before I saw her. That high, breathy chirp that always sounds polite until you realize it's a knife. She needs her family, she was saying to someone. I'm her sister. I didn't move. The nurse glanced at my chart again, looked at the paper I had given her, and the next second I heard security being paged over the intercom. They put a sign on my door. Do not admit. No exceptions. He called me from the hallway. I didn't pick up. When I finally did, during a lull in contractions when the nurse was adjusting the Pitocin drip and the room smelled like antiseptic and ice chips, he whispered into the phone like he was hiding in a closet. I'm here, he said. I want to be in the room. I told him I didn't want him anywhere near me, that the thought of him touching me made every muscle in my body turn to iron. He said he loves me, he said he loves Lisa too, but not in the same way, that I was his home and she was his complication. I laughed so hard a contraction took me to my knees. They kept them out. Security literally stood there. I heard Lisa tell the nurse I was going to ruin Rick's life by not letting him sign the birth certificate. I'm not kidding, on the day I was in active labor, mid-contraction, she was worrying about whether his name would be written in ink on a piece of paper. At 3:41 a.m., under two bright lights, no hand to hold except a nurse's whose name I never even asked, I brought my daughter into the world. There was a terrifying minute where her cry didn't come and then it did, small and furious, like she was already arguing with the universe for making her wait. They put her on my chest and everything went silent. I don't mean the machines. I mean the noise that had been living in my head for months, the voices, the begging, the rehearsed arguments, the obsessive, picking at old scabs, just cut out. All I could smell was her. All I could feel was her tiny ribs heaving against my skin. Rick tried to come in anyway. He told the nurse he'd be signing for his child. She told him the mother chooses who's in the room and whose name goes on the form. I gave my daughter my last name. He can take me to court if he wants. That sentence actually slipped out of my mouth and it was like hearing a stranger speak for me. The nurse smiled at me over her mask like she'd been waiting for me to become that person all along. When we were moved to postpartum, I put my phone on airplane mode and slept in snatches, waking up every time she made some tiny funny snore. When I finally turned it back on there were 20 messages from Rick, a handful from numbers I didn't recognize, spoiler, my mother using different phones, one from my father, call me when you can, and one voicemail that made me sit up so fast I saw spots. It was from Jimmy's mom. I haven't heard that voice since his funeral, all soft and sandpapery like a quilt your grandmother made. Sweetheart, she said, I heard you might need someone who remembers who Lisa was before she was this. I want to be that person if you'll let me. I cried so hard I set off the blood pressure cuff again and the nurse took my phone away. We went home 2 days later to a tiny apartment that suddenly felt like a sanctuary instead of a hiding place. I had made a little bassinet next to the radiator and one of those ridiculous diaper caddies that looks like a felt toolbox because the internet told me to. The first night was a loop of feeding and burping and me googling things like what color baby poop at 4 a.m. It was almost cozy. Then, at 9 the next day, Child Protective Services knocked on my door. A woman with kind eyes and a government badge and the tired posture of someone who has seen too much asked if she could come in. An anonymous report had been made that I was drinking during pregnancy and currently using pills to cope. I laughed. I know. It sounds unhinged to laugh at that. But it was either laugh or smash every dish I own against the wall. The social worker saw my face and said, gently, this happens sometimes with domestic situations. She glanced at the paperwork tacked to my fridge, the protective order, a printout from the hospital with my discharge instructions, the ridiculous meal plan my OB gave me, and asked if she could look in the fridge and the nursery. She checked my baby's diaper, took notes, asked me if I had support. I told her the truth, very little, but I was trying. She handed me a list of resources like it was a map out of a maze and told me she was closing the case as soon as she got back to her car. 2 hours later, my father knocked. He looked smaller. Gray around the eyes, his nice tan coat hanging off him like he'd been borrowing it from a taller man. He held a cardboard box like an offering. I got these, he said, and I don't know why it broke me but the box was full of diapers and there was a stupid little stuffed moose on top, and I ended up crying into my father's shirt for the first time in my adult life. He cried too, quietly, like maybe he'd been saving it for just that moment. He said he was sorry. He said he should have known better. He said he didn't recognize my sister anymore and that scared him. My mother, predictably, couldn't bring herself to come. He put the box down, looked at his granddaughter for a long time like he was memorizing her eyelashes, and whispered hello to her like it was a holy word. Then he told me Jimmy's mother, her name is Marcia, had been calling their house, leaving messages about me, about Lisa, about how this all looked from the outside. Your sister isn't well, he said, and something about the way he said it made me want to sit down and never get up. That night, Rick showed up drunk. He didn't knock. He leaned on the buzzer until the angry guy one floor down came out and yelled at him and I could hear his voice echoing up the stairwell. I'm here to see my kid, he slurred, like that's the magic phrase that opens every door. I called the non-emergency police line and sat on the floor with my baby inside my shirt and listened to him alternate between crying and raging and whispering apologies into the intercom speaker like it was a church confessional. When the officers came, he tried to be charming. He told them we were having a marital misunderstanding. They looked at the paperwork, at the baby, at me, and within 10 minutes I watched him ride away in the back of a cruiser for public intoxication and disturbing the peace. He blew me a kiss through the window like a movie star and my whole body went cold. He texted from a different number the next morning. "You didn't have to do me like that," he said. "Then, you know I love you. Then, we could make this work. Then, I'll take you to court for 50-50. Then a picture of the tiny hospital bracelet the nurse had cut off his wrist when they booked him. The whiplash of it made my teeth hurt. My lawyer, God bless this woman, filed for an emergency temporary order the same day. No unscheduled visits. All communication through the co-parenting app she set up for us. No coming to my residence, paternity to be established by test before any visitation discussions. He tried to argue I was keeping his child from him, and my lawyer, this tiny chihuahua of a woman with red glasses, basically ate him alive over Zoom. He sputtered something about polyamory and family agreements, and I watched the judge's mouth go tight through the pixelation on my phone screen. Lisa, for her part, broke the protective order in the messiest possible way. She sent me a mass text meant for her little group chat that included me by mistake. "Make sure this manipulative bitch doesn't show up," she wrote. "If she does, call the cops. We are not letting her ruin our day." It took me a second to realize what our day meant, and then she sent a picture: white dress, backyard arch made of eucalyptus, Rick in a suit that looked too big, his tie crooked. They had a ceremony in her mom friend's backyard because, surprise, you can't marry someone who's still married. He didn't show. Or he showed and then left. Depends on which cousin of mine you ask. Either way, there is a video floating around Facebook of my sister throwing her bouquet hard enough to decapitate a garden gnome while one of her friends yells he said he was going to the bathroom. And then you hear my mother's voice, high and shrill, telling someone to go get him from the parking lot. I wouldn't have known any of this if my father hadn't come by again and, with the same face you make when you're telling someone their dog ran away, showed me. "I know you don't need to see it," he said, "but you need to know what's happening over there." I turned it off halfway through. It felt like watching strangers stage a play of my own life. The morning after Not a Wedding Day, Lisa left a voicemail that started out calm and slid straight into unhinged. She told me I'd cursed her, that the least I could do, since I had stolen her family, was let Rick be a father in peace. She said if I really loved my baby I wouldn't keep her from him. Then she said, very sweetly, "You know how easy it is to make an anonymous call." CPS had already been to my house. I saved the message and sent it to my lawyer. My hands shook anyway. Meanwhile, Marcia called again. This time, I picked up. She asked if she could come by with food. I almost said no, then I thought about the way she held my hand at Jimmy's wake and mocked the priest under her breath for saying everything happens for a reason. She came over with a casserole and a grocery bag of baby clothes that smelled like cedar. She sat at my table and told me a story about Lisa at 16 that landed like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Obsession disguised as devotion. She didn't use diagnoses. She didn't throw around words like borderline or manipulative. She said, "Lisa feels emptiness and tries to fill it with whoever is standing closest." She said, "Jimmy was kind enough to sit in the splash zone. Rick is not kind. He is just hungry." And then she told me mine is the only baby she will ever be a grandmother to who carries even a whisper of her son's laugh, and she asked if she could help me fold laundry. We cried again, me and this woman who is technically nothing to me on paper, holding up a tiny onesie together like it was proof of life. 2 nights ago, my mother left a voicemail that started with "I just don't understand what you want" and ended with her saying she could forgive me if I apologized to Lisa for putting ideas in Rick's head. I didn't respond. My father texted later and said, "Your mother is choosing to be willfully stupid." Then he asked if he could come by on Saturday to change the batteries in my smoke detectors. It was, somehow, the kindest sentence anyone has ever sent me. And Rick, the co-parenting app is a gift and a curse. He writes to me like we are colleagues who used to sleep together. "I propose Sundays 10 to 12 at the park. Are you breastfeeding? When will you introduce bottles?" Then at midnight, "I miss you." The other night, he wrote, "I keep dreaming about when we were trying, and I watched the typing bubbles on my phone like they were a rattlesnake." He followed it with, "We were happy then." I stared at my daughter sleeping with her mouth open like a tiny old man and realized I had been holding my breath for months waiting for him to say something that would turn us back into who we were. He doesn't have the words. They don't exist. Today, we went to the pediatrician. I strapped my baby into a car seat that may as well be an engineering exam and drove with 2 hands welded to the wheel like 90-year-old me had taken over. We came home and there was a letter wedged into the doorframe. No return address. My stomach did that drop again, but it was from my aunt, my mother's sister. She wrote, "I've been quiet because I didn't want to get in the middle. Then I watched Lisa threaten you online and I watched your mother clap, and I realized there is no middle. There is right and there is Lisa. She offered to come sit with the baby so I could shower. I cried in the shower until the hot water ran out while my aunt sang some 80s song to my daughter in the other room, and for the first time in months, my sobbing didn't feel like drowning. It felt like rinsing something off. There's no neat bow here. He hasn't transformed into a stranger I respect from afar, and she hasn't evaporated into her own drama. They're both very much still themselves, messy, selfish, magnetic when they need to be. I am still myself too, except now there's a person in a bassinet next to my bed who grunts like a tiny piglet and kicks one leg like she's running in her sleep and makes me want to be legally ferocious on her behalf. The divorce is finally moving. He keeps dragging his heels and then tripping over them. My lawyer says he can't marry anyone until he finishes this, and then she smiles like a wolf and tells me we'll be fine. There will be a paternity test. There will be child support. There will be a parenting plan with supervision to start. There will be 1,000 ways this can go sideways and 1,000 small ways it can be okay. I've blocked his midnight musings. I've stopped reading my mother's novels disguised as texts. I sleep when I can. I put the stuffed moose in the crib and it looks ridiculous and perfect. Tonight when I was doing that endless baby rocking sway that now seems to be my default posture, I realized my arms didn't ache from it anymore. They've gotten used to the weight. Maybe that's what this will be, my life getting used to the weight and me getting stronger without even noticing. Maybe the crazy part isn't that my sister tried to build a fairy tale on someone else's husband and my husband said yes. Maybe the crazy part is that after all of that, there is a person here who didn't ask for any of it and still smiles in her sleep like she knows something I don't. I named her after my grandmother, the only woman in my family who ever said no like a complete sentence. I whisper it into her hair when it's 3 in the morning and the whole world is quiet and it's just me and her and the sound of the radiator. I say it like a promise. No more. Never again. I choose us.